Hi. To get one of these, first of all I have to get onto my computer and draw me some irises. Using the free software Paint.net and also my graphics tablet, I paint all my individual irises, and then once I have them all saved individually, I start to collage them together. Each of my scarves is 5 or 6 overlapped prints long. So each page has to consider how the other one will overlap it. This scarf also has a painted element to it. So outside I go, starting off with a warm blue. The templates are because when you overlap the paper like I do before you put it under the heat press, the pigment from the paper below can also come through and into the scarf. So I try to leave some white negative space, or at least some slightly funny shapes, so that I don't get big lines under the heat press. So the idea with this is I'm trying to go for a pond scene. I want streaks, almost the kind of Monet type of effect. So after the warm blues, I'll go away and get some more, and I'll come back with a cool blue, because I think the combination of colours always makes things much more dynamic. Once I've got both blues on, I shall go back in and add some greens, some yellows, some reds, warm and cool reds, and the layering of the colours gives me that ripply pond-like effect. As you can see, I'm actually doing 4 sheets at a time, because once you've got the colours on your brush, it's an awful lot easier to go all the way down than have to change and clean my brush repeatedly. So here's the paper all laid out, waiting to be heat pressed. Now into my press room. I have my heat press set at 200 degrees, with the pressure usually about 6 or 7. The timer is set to 13 seconds. Through trial, error and lots of mistakes, I've worked out that it's best to have the chiffon fabric on top of the print. It means I can keep my fabric as smooth and flat as possible, but inevitably there's always a few tiny creases that can't be avoided. By shuffling the fabric along in such small increments and such a short time, I avoid harsh lines, yet getting significant pigment from the paper onto the fabric. The difficulty with this method is that if the fabric moves at all over the print, you get a ghosting and slightly out of focus effect. You never know if you've been successful till you get to the end and turn the fabric over. Back into my sewing shed. I lay out a piece of chiffon that will go on the back of the scarf, lay my scarf out upside down on top, and pin all the way round. I'm going to sew at the edge of the print all the way round, leaving a gap so I can turn it out. And here's a hint for you. If you put 2 pins at the beginning of the gap you want to leave and 2 pins at the end of the gap you want to leave, you never forget to stop when you get to that point. Saves you unpicking. This is where I pretend I remembered to press record while I was sewing. Back to the workbench. I cut close to the stitch line on all sides. I don't want lots of extra fabric flapping around inside my scarves. Then it needs to be turned the right way around, remembering to poke the corners out so they're nice and sharp. At this point I don't use the iron to press down the seams, as I find it easier to manipulate under the sewing machine. Back to the sewing machine. When the fabric's been manipulated so the front doesn't show in the back and the back doesn't show in the front, I sew close to the edge. I use a clear machine foot so I can see the fabric through it, using the foot itself as my width guide. I don't use a reverse stitch at the start or the beginning, but simply overlap, as it's a much neater finish. All that remains is to get my handy little tabletop ironing board and give the scarves a good press. Although the fabric doesn't crease much, a really good press will get the seams nice and sharp. And we have our lovely art scarf. Cheery bye, my lovelies.